In this video, we're going to cover a couple of topics. Firstly, we're going to fix our slow data load problems that we are experiencing in the previous lessons. And then we're going to talk about how to resolve some data imports errors. So we're actually going to introduce these errors and fix them as well. So if you go back to the transform data here, we can tackle our sales order tables and try to understand what might be going wrong here. So we're connected to our database and navigating to our table. That will happen very quickly, as you've seen in the past. We're replacing a single value. That should resolve pretty quickly as well, especially if we right click and look at our view native query option. We can see that that's all happening in SQL. So that's probably isn't slowing down our data load very much. What is probably happening is when we change our data type and especially adding the custom column, that custom join column, if you remember where we're talking our customer's ID and order date, that's probably causing our data set to load very slowly. So if we delete our two last steps here and test out this data load again, let's see how quickly this will evaluate. Keep your eyes on the sales order tables and see if those rows are going to come in a little bit quicker this time. So we see that the sales order is updating at a speed of many thousands per second. So we're able to hit the sales order table very quickly. So let's just make sure all of our other tables are coming in pretty as well. So order lines is loading pretty quickly and we should be done here in a few seconds. Wonderful, and there we go. So that imported pretty perfectly without errors. A very common error that you might see when loading data into Power BI is that your column does not have a data type that is compatible with the actual records in that column. For example, if I wanted to turn this column ID into a number value, but we had some text value here included in the column as well, you would see a data import error. So let's say for this example, we turn this pick by person ID column into a text column, and we see that we have our nulls. We have some of our text representations of numbers, and then I replace this. Let's say I replace all the nulls with the word that has none instead. When we click OK, that works properly, and then we turn this back into a whole number. You can understand why this column might actually contain errors. And if we then were to close and apply, we would see that once it tries to load this all in, it will give us an error that says that this is loaded query contains errors. We can click on the view errors button, and if we will open up Power Query with a new folder here with the queried errors, and it will filter down our table to just show us the rows that contains errors. So give that 1 second while it's going to load up. And we see that we have a table containing all of our columns with the picked by person ID all containing errors. So let's actually get rid of that query grouping. We'll delete our query below it. Let's go back to our orders tables. So there are a couple of ways that we can handle this. Firstly, the quick way, if we click on our column and right click, and we can remove errors, and then we just have all of our rows that did not evaluate in an error for that column. You can also do this across of the entire table if you want to, but that's not actually the way we would handle this. The way we would handle this would be to identify what's actually taking place in that column. We can understand that what we replaced our values with is actually the incorrect action in order to replace those nulls. So in order to get rid of that, we can replace our replace value step. We can take a look at what we have in our column right now. We have nulls and then we have numbers. And then we see that we have our in type for our change type step. That's perfect. So now our picked by person ID has no errors. And that was an easy fix. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my change type that was changing it to a text. We actually don't need this last step either because we brought this column in as an in type, and now we have no errors. Once again, we can click close and apply, and it will load in that orders table and should just load in perfectly with no errors coming through in our data load process. So from that, we can move on to our next section in the data modeling section.